Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Liz Braden, District 9 City Councillor, and I am the Chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Today is Thursday, April 18th, 2024. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed on boston.gov/city council TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8 and RCN Channel 82 and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.housing@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councillors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they are signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you're interested in testifying, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Karishma Kuhan. Yes, I did. At Karishma, KARISHMA.CHOUHAN @boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on 4 federal grant dockets. Docket number 0573, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $20 million in the form of a grant for the federal financial year 2024 Community Development Block Grant, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Mayor's Office of Housing. The grant will fund housing, economic development and social service programs, and the amount is estimated from prior years. Docket number 0574, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $7 million in the form of a grant for the federal financial year 24 Home Investment Partnership Program, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Mayor's Office of Housing. The grant will fund the production of new and affordable housing and also provide operating support for community development corporations. The award amount is estimated from prior years. Docket number 575, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $4 million in the form of a grant for the financial year 24 Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, HOPWA program, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Mayor's Office of Housing. The grant will fund services for income-eligible individuals and families affected by AIDS, and the award amount is estimated from prior years. Docket number 0576, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $2 million in the form of a grant for the federal financial year 24 Emergency Solutions Grant Program, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Mayor's Office of Housing. The grant will fund street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing assistance and shelter services. The award amount is estimated from prior years. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on March 27, 2024. Today, I am joined by my colleagues, Councillor Flynn, Council President Ruth C. Louis-Jean, and I wasn't watching who came in which order, Councillor Sharon Durkin, and Councillor Pepin. Is that everyone? Yeah.
Councillor Braden, I'm also in. It's Councillor Coletta.
And Councillor Coletta. I apologize if I put you in the wrong order, but when I'm reading, I was watching who was arriving. Opening remarks today, I'm joined by my colleagues in order of arrival: Councillor Flynn, Councillor Ruth C. Louis-Jean, Councillor President, Councillor Durkin, Councillor Pepin, and Councillor Coletta. I would also like to welcome our panelists testifying on behalf of the administration. Daniel Lesser is the Chief of Staff for the Mayor's Office of Housing. I'd also like to acknowledge that Mr. Lesser's colleagues that are present and have made themselves available for questions and comments regarding grant funding programmes. Kathy, I have a list. You may or may not all be on here, but Kathy Miranda, Senior Housing Development Officer, Office of Housing Stability. Shania Fletcher, Director of Grow Boston, the Mayor's Office of Housing. Karen Rabaza, Director of the Boston Home Centre. Kathy Cahill-Holloway, Senior Housing Development Officer. Tina Griffith, Assistant Director of Compliance at the Mayor's Office of Housing. Anna Scher, Senior Project Manager for Office of Workforce Development. Tatiana Joyce, Assistant Director for Grants and Procurement at the Office of Workforce Development, and Abby Fury, Senior Neighbourhood Business Manager for the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. I will ask if any of my colleagues have any opening remarks. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be very brief. I want to say thank you to you, Chair, for the important work you are doing. I also want to thank the administration team as well for the important work that they are doing as well. I'm looking forward to learning more about these grants. I will support all four. I'm also looking to especially learn more about the grant to assist families with AIDS, or a person in their family with AIDS. I think that's an incredible program, exceptional program, and something that is important to me because Mayor Flynn worked on that issue many years ago. So I want to continue to support these housing initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I'll also want to recognise that Councillor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson has joined us. Council President Russi-Louisiane, have you opening remarks?
Thank you. I'll just keep it brief because I want us to get to hearing about these $33 million worth of grants. I just want to thank the Mayor's office. I want to thank, of course, these are important grants that come from the federal government for us to really do the work. We know that housing is the #1 issue that we get as city councilors and #1 issue in our city and Commonwealth. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and looking forward to hearing how we use these grants efficiently and effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durkin, any opening remarks?
Thank you so much, Chair. Really appreciate the activity and everyone who's here. Nice to see Abby. I haven't seen you in a professional setting yet. Thank you for all of your work. Dan, excited to hear more. And I know, I think the work that you all do is so important, and love the Mayor's Office of Housing and everything that we're working on together in my district, and look forward to hearing more about these grants. Thank you so much.
Councillor Pepin, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for having me here. As Councilor President Louisiane mentioned, I just want to be here to learn about these amazing grants. How can I be supportive and just learn how this is going to impact our community? Thank you to the Office of Housing. Thank you to everyone from the administration to being here. Happy to learn more and ask some questions.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Coletta.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the administration for being here. As we talk about potentially a shifting economic landscape in our city, and resources and funding and investments, these federal dollars become more and more precious. And so talking about where they're going and how they're being utilized is key for us. And so I do look forward to diving into the CDBG grant and also some of the funds that are going to affordable housing. So I look forward to the conversation and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez-Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. No open remarks for me. Everyone has said enough. Looking forward to the conversation.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I will just move ahead with the testimony. I'd like to welcome now our panelists testifying on behalf of the administration. Daniel Lesser, Chief of Staff for the Mayor's Office of Housing.
Thank you so much, Chair Braden. And we have a brief presentation that we'd like to give. So if it's all right, I'll share my screen to share the presentation.
Go ahead.
Great. Thank you again, Chair Braden, and all the councilors present for having us today for this hearing on accepting and spending the annual HUD funding. My name is Dan Lesser. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Mayor's Office of Housing. As Chair Braden mentioned, I have a number of colleagues from Mayor's Office of Housing, Office of Workforce Development, Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion as well here to answer any questions. So today we're speaking about 4 federal grants we received for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They are the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership, the Emergency Solutions Grant, and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, HOPWA. These are federal entitlement grants. They're based on a federal formula, so the City of Boston does not apply for them. We kind of get them by fact. They were recently included in the federal budget that passed, so we know the funding is coming, but we are waiting for the final allocation awards from Housing and Urban Development, so you'll see estimated amounts, and we should soon find the specific amounts. We do know through the federal budget process that the Home Investment Partnership Initiative did receive a funding cut. So we are expecting level funding for all the programs other than the Home Investment Partnership, where we are likely to get about $1 million federal funding cut. In this presentation, I'll go through each grant program, talk a little about the work, give some examples, and then at the end, I'll talk about the consolidated plan process for how we plan to use these funds in the future. And then we'd love to take questions from the councilors. So to start with the Community Development Block Grant, this is the biggest grant program of these 4. We're estimating about $17.5 million that we'll receive this coming year. The Mayor's Office of Housing is the administrator of the funds. We keep about $10 million focused on housing, and then we grant to fair housing equity, workforce development, and economic opportunity and inclusion. So the eligible activities are housing rehab, economic development, social services, and public facilities. We use it for a number of different uses across the city. Our housing uses are focused on home buyer education, down payment assistance, home ownership rehab for low and moderate income home owners. We also use it for rental housing development, as well as urban agriculture and education, as well as housing stabilization services. Our colleagues at Workforce Development use their funding focused on job training, and our colleagues at Economic Opportunity and Inclusion use their funds on a number of different small business programs. So you can see a couple pictures here of some examples of our CDBG funds going for home ownership rehab. So on the top, you can see emergency porch repairs in Dorchester. Some stairs are obviously in really bad need of support. To new staircases, you can see another example in Hyde Park on the bottom. Here are some examples of CDBG funds going towards urban agriculture in the last year. So on the right, you can see Women's Lunch Place having used a kind of underused yard and turning into a community garden with raised beds that they're really excited to work with their clients on. And then on the left, you can see raised beds that we work with BPS on through the Boston Green Academy Community Garden, as well as at the Winthrop Street Community Garden. So Home Investment Partnership, this is focused on housing construction and rehabilitation. We're expecting $5.2 million. As I mentioned, we're expecting $1 million cut here. We use this on a variety of different rental and home ownership projects. So you can see on the left, example of where we've used home funds in the past at Four Corners Plaza in Dorchester, developing 35 affordable rental units. And then on the right, Dudley Crossing in Roxbury, developing 47 income restricted units. So the Emergency Solution Grant, this is focused on Boston residents who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. We use the funding for 2 main purposes. One is we fund street outreach. So we fund Pine Street Inn, their overnight van, to do street outreach with people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We also use the funds in our Office of Housing Stability to do a variety of different housing stabilization services. So you can see here some pictures of the Pine Street Outreach Van and their work they do every night, working with people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness on the street. It's an incredible group of people who do the outreach work and so key to the city. Lastly, the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS or HOPWA. So this is a program that supports housing solutions for people experiencing AIDS or HIV. There's a variety of different programs that we fund, from tenant-based rental assistance to housing search to counseling to permanent housing and short-term rental and mortgage and utility assistance. And just to note, we administer the funds for all of Norfolk, Plymouth, and Suffolk counties. So those are the 4 grant programs. And we wanted to talk a little about the consolidated plan process. And so HUD requires every 5 years that municipalities that get these entitlement funds go through a comprehensive planning process to lay out the priorities, set multi-year goals, and estimate funding. So we're in the process of developing that right now for FY25 through 29. The plan has 3 main parts: a needs assessment looking at needs around housing, homelessness, our special need populations, and community and economic development. There's also a market analysis, and then there's a strategic plan, as I mentioned, setting up priorities for funding over the next 5 years. We're in the midst of a very robust citizen participation process to get feedback on those priorities. And so we've had a number of public hearings. We've had lots of consultations with different stakeholders. We just actually talked to all of our homeless service providers in the last week, and we have a public survey that's translated in 12 different languages that is currently open. So the consolidated plan timeline, as I mentioned, we've been doing in-depth engagement over the last couple months, and we are continuing to do that, and we have a couple public hearings coming up that I'll mention in the next slide. We are in the process of drafting it, so we plan to post a draft for public comment in early May. There will be a 30-day public comment period, and then in June we'll move towards finalizing the plan, submitting it to HUD for review and approval. And so how to engage in the consolidated plan process. We have public hearings coming up on 5/21 at Boston Public Library and a virtual one on 5/28. We have a survey that is still open. It's going to close on April 21st, so please get in your feedback as soon as you can. We already have over 300 individuals and 20 organizations who've engaged, and we have that in 12 different languages. And then we're happy to take feedback through the MOH comments at boston.gov, or we have a dedicated phone line as well. So that concludes our presentation, and we'd love to open it up for any questions from the counselors.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Let's see where we are. Okay, we'll start in order of arrival. Councillor Flynn, do you have any questions? Let me see. 5 minutes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you again to Dan for presenting and the administration team. Dan, can you tell me a little about, or tell us more about the outreach services, housing options for persons with AIDS?
Sure. Thanks, Councillor Flynn. So we have a variety of different services, but I actually have our resident expert on the call, Katie Cahill-Holloway, who has been administering the program for many years. So I'll pass it to Katie to go in depth about our programmatic offerings.
Sure. Hi, can folks hear me?
Yes, we can, Katie.
Awesome, thank you. Good morning, Councillor Flynn and others that are on the call. So HOPWA stands for Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. And as Dan mentioned, we administer the award for Eastern Massachusetts counties, Suffolk, Norfolk, and Plymouth. We currently have 5 providers that administer the funding, and we fund a variety of activities. So the biggest investment is in TBRA, which stands for Tenant-Based Rental Assistance. So that is subsidized, like a voucher program that is paired with services to make sure that people are stabilized in housing and that they're connected to sort of, medical services and mainstream benefits in order to successfully remain in housing. In addition to that, we fund, I think, 3 service programs that offer supportive services for people that might not be in TVRA but need that level of service. And we also fund some housing information programs for people that are living with HIV/AIDS that need assistance with locating housing that's suitable for them and close to their sort of support networks. The other 2 financial assistance programs that are available through HOPRA that were on the slide is something called STROMU, which is kind of a goofy acronym, but it stands for Short-Term Rental Mortgage and Utility Assistance. And that basically operates like a homelessness prevention program. So it's for folks that are low to moderate income, that are living with HIV/AIDS, and they need short-term assistance just to be able to stabilize their rental or pay their mortgage. And then the final activity that we fund is something called permanent housing placement, and that is really startup costs. So if people have been working with a housing information program and they've located a unit, but they just need that assistance with meeting steep startup costs to get in there, the PHP program can assist with those type of costs. We have 5 HOPRA-funded providers, so that includes Metro Housing Boston, Fenway Health, Commonwealth Land Trust, Father Bill's Mainspring for Norfolk and Plymouth counties, and then Justice Resource Institute.
Thank you, Katie. The information you provided was very helpful. I also want to say thank you, Katie, for the work that you are doing and your team is doing. I have no further questions and look forward to supporting these grants when they come up for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Council President Louis-Jean, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. I'm just really encouraged, especially as someone used to, an attorney that used to represent families facing eviction, how much of this is really focused on keeping our residents housed. I do have a question on, and I think it's something that I missed regarding level funding, something like what's going to be level funded. Dan, do you think you could explain that a little bit? And then I apologize for missing that. What exactly is going to be level funded?
Sure. And I think, unfortunately, these programs have been level funded for many, many years as expenses have continued to rise. And so it's ended up that even though it's been level funded, it's ended up feeling like a cut for many years, but we are expecting all the programs other than the Home Investment Partnership to be level funded for this coming year. We're still waiting for HUD's final allocation decisions, but based on the federal budget, we're expecting level funding. The only program where we're not expecting level funding is the Home Investment Partnership that's focusing on affordable housing rehab and development, and we're expecting approximately a $1 million cut based on the federal budget cut that happened in the budgeting process recently.
So you're expecting a $1 million cut to that. So from 7 million to 6 million, or from 8 million to 7 million?
Let me just go back to my notes. So yeah, so we're expecting from 6 million to 5 million.
Okay, and what is that going to what will be the tangible effect of that cut?
Yeah, so we have a variety of different housing development funding sources from the City of Boston Operating Fund, CPA, Neighborhood Housing Trust, CDBG, Home, and ARPA. And so I think it's just, we're always moving dollars around to try to fund different developments. And so I think we see it as like an overall, $1 million cut to our development budget. I think we're able to move things around likely, especially since we still have a significant amount of ARPA funding. But I think in the long term, it will lead to, less housing units and that we'll be able to move forward with.
Okay, thank you. I think that just also really highlights the need for us to be working in partnership with our state partners and sort of getting the real estate transfer fee so that we can get more money when there is this level funding that feels like a cut, and when there are these sort of cuts that we see coming from the federal government. But thank you for that explanation, and I appreciate it. And I'm enthusiastic anytime that we can, right, as councilors, we get these questions, and we're always working with Office of Housing Stability. We're always working with the Mayor's Office of Housing, and we're always saying that we need more housing and we need to support our residents who want to be able to age in place, and we have all these repair issues. So this work is incredibly important, and I thank you for being with us this morning, and I'll look forward to supporting you on this and everything else we can. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Louis-Jean. Councillor Durkin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. Wanted to ask a little bit more about the federal FY24 Emergency Solutions Grant, and also just ask like a very basic question. But so we're basically authorizing like an accept and expend up to like a certain level. Is that usual when the budget comes out, and or basically when you see things of the federal government? And is that just for like for us to be able to use those funds expeditiously? So we do that ahead of the money actually being there?
That's a great question. I think we had submitted the accept and expend request prior to Congress passing the federal budget. So I think we were being ambitious, hoping that there might be more funds coming in. So you can see slightly larger amounts, up to amounts. But since we submitted the acceptance expend request, Congress did pass the federal budget. So now we kind of have much better senses of what we're likely to get.
Got it. So essentially, that was why they were higher than like what the actual will probably be.
Correct.
Or is because of what's been passed.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And regarding the funds for outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing assistance and shelter services, I know that oftentimes when there are displacements in our city, you know, they're the result of like natural disasters and things that we can't control. And I know we have a great partner in the Red Cross who is often there. What in terms of that $2 million, up to $2 million accept and expend, and I'm sorry I don't have the docket number in front of me. In terms of that one, what is the usual use of that money? And just curious. I feel like we do need more resources for we have a great partner in the Red Cross, but like relying on that all of the time when, you know, when we have residents that are sort of out of luck for the night and like, you know, are on the edge of, and I know we have a lot of partners, but I'm just curious if you feel the need that if you feel that we need more money for those purposes, and if I'm reading into what that grant is for correctly.
Sure. Yes. And right now I think you're reading incorrectly what the grant is for. And right now we divide the funds between half of it going to street outreach through the Pine Street Overnight Street Outreach Van. So those are kind of giving services to people living on the street, as well as trying to get them into both temporary and permanent housing solutions. And the other half is through our Office of Housing Stability, which is working on a variety of different housing stabilization services. You were mentioning the natural disaster and fire response work. And so we definitely use emergency solution grant contracts connected to our stabilization after fires. I don't think our funding for like the direct hotel rooms comes through this, but I can pass it to my colleague Kathy Miranda in a minute. But we do use a variety of funds. You know, we are in a housing crisis, as you all know, and so I think we are always struggling with enough resources. And you know, the Office of Housing Stability gets 600 calls a week for people in housing crisis, and it's an amazing team, and they're working really hard to prioritize those cases. But it's a big wave coming at the team. But I'm going to pass it to my colleague Kathy Miranda to see if she wants to add more specificity around the ESG funded programs for Office of Housing Stability.
Sure, thank you. So because the Emergency Solutions Grants has very specific eligibility requirements, we choose to use that funding for more general homelessness prevention, because it only allows us with that grant to serve people at 30% AMI of the income and below. And often we find that persons displaced by fire at a variety of income levels, and we want to be able to support them. So we use Housing 2030 or city operating funds to fund those emergency response programs. We've been partnering with the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing for several years now. They're our first go-to, and they manage the funding, both for fires and for water main breaks, flooding, any of the disasters that happen in the city. We usually respond within 24 to 48 hours. We are able to provide a short-term hotel stay. often,
Sorry, just to dig into that a little more, in terms of like the NOAA, because I've heard of that, but I think that money is usually prioritized for families. And obviously we just don't want to let anyone, or that's what I've heard. And so just wanted to ask that question while we have the right people in front of us about sort of what ends up being prioritized, because I know that we need more funds for these things. And, you know, we're catching people on like their worst night in their lives. And oftentimes like it's hard to prioritize, you know, when there are big buildings that things happen in. So sorry, Catherine, to interrupt, just wanted to add that.
Sure. So with regards to the hotel stay funding specifically, we do prioritize households that contain a child because they're otherwise unable to access emergency sheltering. So individuals are generally able to access sheltering for individuals. They are still eligible for case management, housing search assistance, and financial assistance through our office, through our funded contracted providers. Often the challenge with the hotel stays is the length of stay and the amount that those costs can become, given that hotel rates vary. We do have some hotel contracts to provide some level of stable rate, but it can often be quite a large amount of funding that's needed. It can often be difficult. We find that often people were underhoused prior to the fire, and rehousing them following the fire can take much more time than might be otherwise estimated. It's often people who were doubled up or overcrowded in a unit. So those are some of the challenges.
And just to add on what Kathy was saying around our fire response is, you know, we work really collaboratively with the Red Cross, with ONS on any fires that happen. You know, we've had 2 major fires in the past couple weeks, and so what normally happens is the Red Cross and ONS will be out at the fire scene, you know, as soon as it happens, and then as soon as OHS staff gets there in the morning, they'll start calling through a list that ONS has created of each person who was affected by the fire and working with them to making sure they have a plan for stable housing. Often that means, you know, putting them up into our hotel stay program. It could mean other solutions as well, but we're following up with every single person and making sure that they have a plan for housing. As you mentioned, Councilor Durkin, you know, often on the worst day of their life. And so anything we can, you know, we continue to work really hard to make sure that happens, and also figure out how we can improve the coordination with ONS and Red Cross.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Durkin. Next up, Councillor Pepin, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to that very last point that Dan was talking about, I just want to thank specifically Daniel Johnson from OHS. As the former Executive Director of Neighborhood Services, I found myself many times reaching out to your department to request assistance with families that were displaced. So thank you for that. My question is more regarding your social services assistance and just assistance in general to families with Section 8 vouchers. Just last week, I was at a panel conversation with Councilor Santana with MAHA, and they were asking us, you know, what benefits are coming down the line for just more assistance to help with down payment assistance to folks with Section 8 vouchers. Do any of these funds help expand those funds, or would that come from somewhere else?
And Councillor Pepin, are you speaking of folks with rental Section 8 vouchers who want to become homeowners?
Correct.
Yeah, so these funds are used for general down payment assistance. They could be accessed by folks with Section 8 vouchers. We are using a different funding pot, our American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funding, to fund a program with the Boston Housing Authority that specifically funds expanded down payment assistance for folks in BHA units, often with project-based Section 8 vouchers, who are using the Section 8 to homeownership program. And so we are funding expanded down payment assistance for BHA residents. We don't yet have we're not planning right now to have an expanded down payment assistance for folks with federal mobile Section 8 vouchers, but I think we're continuing to look at different opportunities to support homeownership for, you know, folks with Section 8 vouchers for low moderate income homeowners overall. I have Karen Rabaza here, who's the director of the Boston Home Center. Karen, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we currently have anybody that is 80% of AMI and below, we use Section 8, we use CBDG funding. In October of 2022, like Dan mentioned, BHA launched the first home program in a partnership with the City of Boston, where residents could get up to $75,000. 25,000 from BHA and 50,000 from ARPA or CPA funding. And sometimes we have also allocated, depending of their very low income, some of the CBDG funding. So these funds, we make sure they go to the very low to moderate income families. So we use it for down payment assistance.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. That very timely for me that I was at the panel last week and now I get to ask you this question here. So thank you for that. And then, Madam Chair, do you have time for one more question, a quick one?
Yes, you have time for one more question.
Would we be able to use these funds to say purchase units on the market at the moment and make them affordable units?
So we haven't used any of these entitlement grants, to my knowledge, for our acquisition opportunity program, where we go and purchase market rate units and turn them into permanently affordable. We are currently spending down $28 million of ARPA funds that we're using for acquisitions. But to my knowledge, and I can definitely get back to you on this, we haven't used these funds for acquisitions in the past, and that may be based on like the funding eligibility requirements that we found other sources are more flexible to use for acquisitions. But I can get back to you on that.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you so much. But that is it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Pepin. Let's see, Councillor Coletta, you're next. 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you everybody for your questions and your answers thus far. I do want to dig into the Emergency Solutions Grant a little bit more and clarify some things. Piggybacking off of Councillor Durkin's questions, just given that we've had these devastating fires in East Boston over the last couple of weeks, and seeing the logistics and operations of working with these families, working with ONS, working with Red Cross, and then working with OHS. I mean, people are working very hard to support victims. And I think there's another conversation for another day about how we are better at doing all of this work and the operations and truly assisting them during the most difficult point of their lives. With this fund, so I just want to be clear. So the Emergency Solutions Grant that we have here, that we're discussing here today, is more generally for homeless street outreach. It does not fund any operations or any partnerships with NOAA to assist folks with fire incidents or emergency incidents like building collapses. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we do use it for housing stabilization work through Office of Housing Stability. The NOAA contract is not funded with these with ESG funds. As Kathy mentioned, we use City of Boston operating funds because they're the most flexible and we're able to respond to the moment, not worry about income eligibility. For the OHS contracts, we use ESG funding for contracts with ABCD, Asian American Civic Association, Boston Medical Center, around stabilization, case management, housing search, and with a real focus on preventing displacement and homelessness.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I just want to say that there are instances where this devastating moment is the moment where these folks enter into endless poverty. Like, they are just on the cusp of not being able to afford living in this city. And then so when they are displaced, many of them are living multiple families one family in multiple bedrooms, and they don't have first or last. And then they get this gap funding from the Red Cross for 2 or 3 days, and then it runs out, and then they are literally homeless. So I do want to talk about that in another time, and just it was brought up, so I wanted to circle back. But again, thank you all so much for your work. I know it's a difficult situation and we're in a housing shortage. For the CDBG grants, really happy to see that it's funding this grassroots program and community gardens. Have you had any projects in my district in East Boston, Charlestown, and the North End that you can talk about. We are trying to partner with Eastie Farms to expand their operation. They've demonstrated that they're a good community partner and able to handle some of these funds. But do you have any instances that you can talk about in District 1 that have been funded by the CDBG grant?
Sure. Yeah, I know we actually have several. We have Shawnee Fletcher, Director of Grow Boston, on the call. So Shawnee, I don't know if you want to jump in to talk about some of the specific examples of Grow Boston programs in District 1.
Yes, absolutely. And just to clarify, Councilor, are you asking about in this last year or in general in recent years? Because we've had several, but not
in the last year.
In the last year. I probably need to look in our database. I think they have not, there's not been a new one. Well, the one that I'm thinking of is, not funded by CDBG. I don't think there has been a new one this year. I think the greenhouse at 6 Chelsea Terrace is the most recent one. I can take a look and get back to you if I am misremembering, but I'm pretty sure every other project we've done a few projects. We've done Sumner Street. We've done, we've funded some improvements at our garden across the Umana School, and we have done the Chelsea Terrace garden. Charlestown Sprouts. That was for Eastie. That is what is. I'm sorry, I'm getting chats with the information as we speak. So that's what's happening.
Charlestown Sprouts in Charlestown.
Sprouts has gotten funding recently for improvements, and Sumner Street has some improvements that we're going to be signing a grant agreement soon. So those are the two most recent ones.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for remembering that. If you feel like you've missed anything, please feel free to reach out.
No, I don't think so. I mean, like I said, we've done several projects with them, but they're mostly more than a year old. So that's why I was like, everything that immediately came to mind are all the big flashy things that are already finished, but those are the recent funding awards.
Awesome. Providing whole, nutritious foods in close proximity to residents is very important to me and vital to the future of our city. And the last thing I'll say is that the CDBG grants with the facade and business assistant has been a lifeline for a lot of our local businesses. So I just want to thank everybody for their work on that. And that is all that I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coletta. I just want to acknowledge that Councillor Santana has joined us. Next up, Councillor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. Worked a lot. I was an executive director for one of the main streets and worked a lot with CDBG grants and in other ways, small business, housing, and so fully support it, understand it, and I think some of my questions have been asked. So I thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Fernandez-Anderson. Councillor Santana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for the administration for being here. Likewise, as Councillor Fernandez-Anderson also just mentioned, I also don't have any questions. A lot of my colleagues asked many questions, and presentation was great, and I look forward to supporting these grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santana. Okay, as all my colleagues have asked their questions, I had a few just to get a better understanding of the HUD funds. About 40% of the city's federal funds come through HUD, so that's the big kahuna, and then over 20% of the city's federal funds are also passed on to other sub-recipients. So what other municipalities, can you remind me again who the sub-recipients might be for these funds, like in Suffolk County or further afield?
Yeah, so we have a whole bunch of different subrecipients. Almost all of these funds are passed through to different subrecipients for contracts for services. The only funds that go directly to constituents are our down payment assistance and our home repair programs. Otherwise, they all go to different contracts, and so it's a very long list of different nonprofits and social service providers. I wonder, I can definitely go through it, but if you'd like, we can send you a full list of all the recipients.
And I know we had a discussion about another grant in another committee a while ago, and one of the issues when they'd done an audit was that the financial controls of tracking subrecipients and how they were spending the money. Do you have that's part of your responsibility because you throughput the funds to the other subrecipients. So is that an onerous task for your department?
So it definitely is a large task. I'm not sure if it's onerous, but we are blessed to have a very large administration and finance team who oversees the compliance with all the federal grants and make sure we are following all the requirements. We actually, Tina Griffith, who is on the call, Assistant Director of Compliance, did a training for all of our staff on Tuesday around subrecipient agreements and how we monitored that. So I think we are fairly well situated to effectively monitor the grants and make sure that they are being used effectively. Tina, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, so we just recently updated our subrecipient monitoring plan and risk assessments, all approved by HUD and built out of requirements and just best practices as well, not just requirements from HUD. And so all of our subrecipients have the same standards that we hold them to. Before even receiving the grant, there's a good governance check that's done on all of them for their financial stability and the ability to spend and use effectively the funds. And then we have different monitoring set up based off of their risk. Certain HUD deems certain activities as high risk regardless, just because. So those are high risk. So all of the risk assessment is set up to determine how student-based each monitoring should be, but everyone is monitored, and they're monitored at least 4 times a year through desk review, but they all have an on-site monitoring at minimum of once every 3 years, most of them actually being monitored on-site every 1 to 2 years. We also will have a technical assistance program we set up just for all people that are new to using federal funds so that they understand the very lengthy requirements that come with all of these funds through HUD. So, but yes, we have a great program set up for monitoring through these funds.
And are you folks able to handle that in-house in Mayor's Office of Housing without outside support from central Ministry of Finance? You have a good team there.
Yes, the project managers for each of the different divisions do the desk reviews, and compliance team also assist with all reporting.
Sounds great. So also a lot of these DBG grants are rolling forward it's an entitlement program. You don't have to apply. It sort of comes to you. You just have to comply with the rules and regulations. Do you compete for competitive grants like discretionary grants in addition to these block grants?
Yes, we do. So I think the biggest one would be our Continuum of Care grant, which funds our homelessness response system. And so every year, and actually may change every 2 years, we go through a very lengthy competitive application process. And we've seen the award go up from about 20 million, 7 or 8 years ago to I think we were at 44 million this past year. Katie Cahill-Holloway, who's on the call, who spoke earlier, leads that process. And so that is probably the largest competitive grant. We also have applied for other competitive grants. We recently won a $16.5 million special notification of funding award for our unsheltered homeless system, where we create about 300 units of permanent housing for people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and that was a very competitive process. We actually thought we wouldn't get it, but we were able to get the funding. So I think we continue to look for opportunities and then apply, and then we've generally been pretty competitive in those applications.
Sounds wonderful. The other question I had was with relation to the census. I know in District 9 we had an undercount because the census count just happened as a lot of students had left. The population declined significantly. Do you see any ripple effect from an undercount in the 2020 census in terms of block grant monies coming in? Was there any impact that you noticed from that?
I am not sure.
A couple of years out from it now at this point.
Yeah, I am not sure. The entitlement grants are based on formula, which includes much census information. Tina, do you know the answer to that question?
Yes, it's actually done one through census, but also through just general population, property tax things. And they take a lot of things into consideration. So it's known that a lot of the population here is students in the city of Boston, but so they still count those people, even though not through census. They have a lot of different reporting mechanisms that they use. If you look on our consolidation plan website, there's actually data tables that have been uploaded through HUD. And then through our own research as well, that take a lot of different things into consideration, not just the census, for determining our population size.
Good. And in terms of your consolidated plan, your 5-year plan, do you see any significant shifts in our population or our needs going forward for the next 5 years?
Tina, do you want to take that one again?
Okay, yeah. There's not been a big shift. The Grow Boston programs have been extremely successful, and a lot of people have commented on the need for that and the continued support for that. Obviously, housing is the main priority for everyone, is the highest need so far. This year, we created a survey to help, and we updated our community participation plan so that we could help really get the word out to a lot of different neighborhoods and give people a lot of different options and ways to interact with us. So that's been really successful. But so far, it's pretty much the same of homelessness, housing, and I would say that our biggest change has come our biggest increase has come in the Grow Boston area of people really wanting to have that support in the community gardens and the open spaces.
Very good, thank you. Well, that's all my questions. My colleagues, anyone else have a final question? Okay. This question. Let's go through my list here. Shane, is there anyone for public testimony?
It looks like they're not here, so I think we're all good.
No one?
No.
Oh, thank you. All right. I want to thank you all again, the panelists and my colleagues, for being here this morning to discuss these very important grants. I want to thank Ethan and Karishma from Central Staff for all their help. And this hearing on dockets 0573 to 0576 is adjourned. Thank you all so much and have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.